Black cop vanished responding to a call in 1984. 19 years later, this is found in the ocean. They pulled the car from the ocean on a Tuesday. It was just after sunrise, but the clouds made it feel like dusk. A barge crew doing sonar sweeps for a construction project near the Eddystone coast picked up something large, metallic, and misshapen lodged in a rock shelf 30 feet down. At first, they thought it was scrap, a dumped appliance, or the husk of a fishing boat. But as the crane lifted it from the water, and the seaweed peeled back like skin, the shape became unmistakable. It was a police cruiser. The doors were nearly gone. The roof had caved in from pressure and corrosion. Glass long disappeared. Paint stripped down to bare metal in patches, the remaining letters ghost-like on the driver's side, Alice Dept. The front grille bore the fading emblem of St. James County. But what made the crew stop, what made one of them reportedly step back and murmur, "No way," was what was still inside. On the passenger seat, a rusted police-issue flashlight. In the door panel, a waterlogged clipboard, the metal bent but the sheet beneath protected enough to read the name, A. Monroe, badge 22714. The name hadn't been uttered publicly in over a decade. Not because people forgot, but because they'd chosen not to speak it anymore. Officer Alicia Monroe disappeared in 1984 during what should have been a routine domestic disturbance call. Dispatch records showed she left the station at 8:44 p.m., alone, heading to a property just outside town, an old house off Cinder Lane. She never called in again. No radio contact. No witnesses. No reports of anyone being at the residence. Her cruiser vanished with her. For 19 years, no trace, not a single clue, and now the ocean had coughed up something it had kept hidden for nearly 2 decades. My name is Elliot Monroe. I'm a teacher now. I live 2 states away, have a family, a mortgage, all of that. I don't work in law enforcement. Never did. But I grew up in the shadow of a missing person. The kind of shadow that stretches out over your whole life without you realizing it. Alicia Monroe was my aunt. My father's younger sister. The only cop in the family. He never talked about her, not once. When I was a kid, I thought maybe they weren't close. But then I found an old photo tucked into a law textbook in his study, her in uniform, standing beside her cruiser, grinning wide like she'd just been told the world was hers. My dad was standing next to her, hand on her shoulder. He looked 10 years younger. And in that one picture, I saw more warmth between them than I ever saw in real life. The year I turned 11, he threw the textbook in the trash, didn't say a word, just dropped it in the bin with the morning coffee grounds, and when I asked why, he said, "Some things don't get remembered right. So it's better not to remember them at all." But my grandmother, Alicia's mother, never stopped remembering. Every Christmas, she'd hang a stocking for her. Every birthday, she'd put a card in the mailbox addressed to Alicia Monroe, St. James County PD. She never cried about it, at least not where we could see. But she made it real, year after year, in small ways that no one could ignore. Then came the day in July 2003 when the ocean gave something back. The cruiser was barely a cruiser anymore. When the marine team got it onto the barge, parts of the frame collapsed under their own weight. The salt had eaten everything. But somehow, impossibly, the dashboard radio was intact. Encrusted, silent, but unbroken. When the technician opened the casing, he found something that should have corroded to dust long ago. The original dispatch log tape. They tried to play it back. The audio was warped, soaked in static and gurgling interference. But around the 3-minute mark, a voice came through. Clearer than anyone expected. Unit 2-3, on approach. Lights off. No vehicles outside. No movement. Pause, front doors. Open. Then silence. Hissing static. Then, I see someone. The recording ended with a harsh mechanical pop, like the tape had been yanked mid-recording. It wasn't much. Barely a sentence. But it was more than they had for 19 years. And it confirmed something the official report never admitted. She made it to the house. St. James County didn't handle it well. They released a formal statement that the cruiser had been found during a routine offshore recovery operation, and that they would be reviewing materials with the cooperation of state authorities. Behind closed doors, they were panicking, because here's the thing: Cinder Lane doesn't go anywhere near the ocean, it's 15 miles inland. The house she was dispatched to? It was torn down in 1989. Demolished after the family that bought it moved out 6 months later, reportedly after their son started sleepwalking into the woods at night. The property sat vacant for years. No utilities. No security. Just foundation blocks and vines. So how did a cruiser driven to a house 15 miles inland end up beneath an ocean cliff on the opposite side of the county? No one could explain it, and no one, officially, even tried. But I've spent the last 7 years trying to. Quietly. Carefully. I didn't want attention. I didn't want to embarrass my family. But the day they found her car, something inside me shifted. Something opened, because I remembered something I shouldn't have, a conversation I overheard between my grandmother and my dad the year before she died. I was 14. They were in the kitchen, whispering. I was around the corner. Out of sight, doing homework, she said, "You know what you saw, Michael? You were the last one to talk to her. And you know it wasn't just a call." He didn't answer right away. Then, it wasn't her voice on the radio. After they found the cruiser, my dad got quiet again. He'd already been a quiet man, but after that July morning, it was like something had closed off in him completely. He stopped watching the news, avoided calls from former colleagues, and when a reporter knocked on our door to ask about Alicia, he just stood there behind the screen door and said, flatly, "You're 30 years too late." I tried asking him about it once. Just once. It was a week after the news broke. I came home from work late. Found him sitting alone on the porch with an untouched beer and a look on his face like he was watching something that wasn't there. I said, "Dad. You were the last one to talk to her, weren't you?" He looked at me and said something that haunts me still. I heard her voice say my name. But it didn't sound like her mouth made the sound. Then he got up, went inside, and never said another word about it. The town of St. James didn't change overnight, but it felt like something had shifted beneath the surface. There were whispers again, the kind I remember overhearing in my childhood. Some people claimed they'd seen her. Others said the tape was a fake. That the car was planted. That it was all a distraction. But what chilled me wasn't the rumors, it was the people who avoided talking at all. Like Sheriff Dana Bowles. Bowles was a rookie deputy in 1984. Now, in her early 60s, she held the badge Alicia once wore. A local legend, a respected, no-nonsense, deeply rooted. She gave the initial press briefing when the cruiser was recovered, kept it tight, clean, by the book, but what caught my attention was what she didn't say. She didn't mention Alicia's name, not once. In August 2003, I went back to St. James for the first time in 5 years. Not for closure, I didn't believe in that. I went because I needed to see something with my own eyes. I needed to drive that stretch of coast where they found the car. I wanted to stand on Eddystone Bluff and ask myself a simple question: how does a patrol car end up here, with no road, no access, and no explanation? I brought a recorder, my notebook, and a flashlight. I didn't tell anyone I was coming. The bluff was quiet. No warning signs, no fence. Just a narrow trail through dry brush that ended in a jagged overlook. Below, black rocks, white surf, and open ocean. No sign of any evidence tape or salvage equipment, but as I turned to head back to my rental, I saw something, a shape on the edge of the trail, half hidden by overgrowth. I stepped closer. It was a road flare. Long burned out. Cracked casing. But unmistakable, and it was police issue. The next day, I visited the county records building. I told them I was writing a piece for a local history journal, which wasn't exactly true, but close enough. I asked for the original case file for the 1984 Monroe disappearance. The clerk hesitated. Asked for ID. Then told me that the file had been sealed. When? I asked. She checked the computer, 2 weeks ago. Right after the cruiser was found, I kept digging. Over the next few months, I found things that weren't supposed to be findable, thanks to a few friends still working in state archives, and a box of old cassette tapes my grandmother had kept in the attic. One of them was labeled simply, April 9, 84, Alicia, dispatcher. The tape was a copy of her last known radio check-in. The one the department claimed was missing for years. My grandmother had it the whole time. I played it late one night, volume low, notebook ready. At first, it was what you'd expect, Alicia reporting in, confirming the address, 218, Cinder Lane, ETA 10 minutes. Nothing strange. Calm voice. Focused, then came a shift. A pause. You could hear the cruiser engine in the background, idling. Then she said, "Something's wrong with the lights out here." Static, the porch lights flickering. But I'm not close enough for it to be reacting to the car. Then quieter, almost like she was talking to herself, "They're on." Then off. Then on. Like they know I'm watching. A beat of silence. Then, Monroe to dispatch. Approaching residents on foot. What followed next was hard to describe. There was the sound of her footsteps. Gravel crunching. Then a door creak, not from her, but distant. Like from inside the house. Then, her voice again, softer, "Is someone there?" Then, a long, dragging static. Not the kind that comes from tape degradation, but something else. It rose and fell like a tide, full of faint pops and whispers that almost made words but didn't quite land. At the end of the tape, just before it cut, a final sentence came through, "Michael, it's not a person." That was it, my father's name. And the last thing she ever said on record. I started having trouble sleeping after that, not nightmares, exactly. Just fragments. I'd wake up around 3:30 a.m., convinced I'd heard the sound of a car door closing outside. Or footsteps on gravel. Or, once, the distinct click of a two-way radio opening channel. Each time, I'd rush to the window, each time, nothing. But I started to notice something else too. My calls to people involved in the original case started going unanswered. A few old deputies I'd managed to speak with went silent. One of them, Officer T. Dugan, who logged the original dispatch that night, had agreed to meet me at a diner outside county limits. He never showed. I called his number that evening and got a message that the line had been disconnected. When I checked again a week later, no record of the phone number at all. I don't know what happened to Alicia Monroe, but I believe she made it to that house. I believe she went inside. And I believe that what she found there, or what found her, didn't kill her in the way we understand, because what I've come to suspect is that the ocean didn't carry her car to Eddystone Bluff. It was put there, deliberately, as a warning. I drove back to the coast 2 weeks later. This time, not alone. My cousin Rachel, Alicia's goddaughter, had been following my research quietly. She worked in marine conservation and had clearance for survey drones and diving gear. She called me one night, out of nowhere, and said, "I ran tests on the site. You're not crazy." She'd dropped sonar and submersible cams in the area where the cruiser had been pulled from. What she found was disturbing, not just one depression in the ocean floor where the car had settled, but two more, spaced evenly apart. One larger. One small. Both far too geometric to be natural. She sent me stills. One of them showed what looked like a staircase, carved from stone, partially overgrown with sea moss. Leading nowhere. Just into shadow. "There's something built down there, Elle," she said. "Something old. And it's not on any geological survey map." The coordinates placed it nearly directly beneath Cinder Lane. That stopped me cold. Cinder Lane, the inland address where Alicia vanished, didn't lie above a direct route to the coast. But something about the earth beneath it, the channels, the faults, maybe even the water table itself, suggested a subterranean passage. Geological or otherwise, somehow, the place she was last seen and the place her cruiser was found might have been connected all along. I went back to the remains of the Cinder Lane house. It wasn't easy. The lot had long since been overtaken by brush and saplings, and the driveway had sunk beneath soft dirt and root systems. But the stone steps were still there, just barely visible through the ivy. I stood there for a while, breathing in the stillness, trying to imagine her walking up to that door, radio crackling at her side, and then I saw something strange. There was a concrete slab about 10 feet off to the side, half covered in dead leaves and moss. I assumed it was just part of the old foundation. But when I stepped onto it, I felt a hollow vibration beneath my foot. I knelt down and started clearing the surface. There was a seam, a rectangular outline. A hatch, of some kind. Old metal, rusted shut. I tried prying it open, but it didn't budge. Not with bare hands. I took a picture and left. I needed tools. And I needed help. I called Rachel. We came back 2 nights later with 2 crowbars, a folding shovel, a weatherproof camera, and a pair of battery-powered lanterns. I didn't want to involve anyone else. Not yet. It took over an hour, but the hatch finally cracked. Beneath it was a steel ladder leading straight down, into blackness that swallowed our light after only 20 feet. It smelled like mold, metal, and sea brine. I know how strange that sounds. We were miles from the ocean, but the air was wet, salty, wrong. We looked at each other. Neither of us said it, but we were both thinking the same thing. This shouldn't be here. I went first. The rungs were damp, cold, and slick with something like algae. When my boots touched the floor, I realized we were standing in some kind of tunnel, a corridor maybe 5 feet wide, with reinforced walls and bolted metal struts. There was graffiti on one side, faded almost beyond recognition. But not random tags, symbols. Circles within circles. Hands. Eyes. Rachel took a photo. Her camera blinked twice, then died. So did our phones, only the lanterns kept working. We moved forward slowly. After about 30 paces, the tunnel curved gently left and widened. There were doors here, rusted, dented, warped with moisture. One was hanging half off its hinges, and beyond it we found a room. Empty, stone walls, concrete floor, one metal table bolted into the center, and something etched into the top of it, letters, words. Rachel wiped the surface and read aloud, "Listen for her in the water." I felt every hair on my body rise. We didn't stay long. Some instinct, or maybe just survival, told us to leave. We resealed the hatch and marked the GPS. But something had shifted. This wasn't just a cold case. It wasn't even just a missing person. It was systematic, hidden, and deliberately erased. Someone had tried to bury this place, literally. And if we hadn't found it, maybe it would have stayed that way. But now the question wasn't just where Alicia had gone. It was, what had she heard before she disappeared, and had someone else, or something else, been listening back? A few days later, I got a letter in the mail, no return address. No signature. Just a thick manila envelope with an old county seal stickered to the back, the kind they hadn't used since the 80s. Inside were 6 photocopied pages. Each one was a police report from 1984. Each one labeled filed, not processed. All written within the same week of Alicia's disappearance. And each one with an eerily similar detail, different witnesses. Different neighborhoods, but every single report mentioned this phrase: she was standing still in the middle of the street. Black uniform. But her face was wrong. I didn't sleep the night I got that envelope. I laid all 6 reports on the floor of my living room and read them over and over. Every single one had a different witness: a school janitor, a delivery driver, a librarian walking home after a late shift. All saw the same thing, all within a 3-day span in April 1984, a woman standing still in the street at night. In a police uniform. Silent. Watching. And every single witness said the same words when describing her: her face was wrong. 2 even added something else: it looked like it wasn't finished. Whatever that means. One report, the last in the pile, was filed by a man named Eugene Knox. Then 34, a night watchman for a factory out on Route 17. His report had a handwritten note stapled to it, not typed like the others. The handwriting was sharp, neat, and angry. he knows what he saw. Don't bury this again. You owe her that much. There was no signature, but the handwriting matched a note I'd once found tucked inside my grandmother's old Bible. It was hers. I tracked down Eugene Knox, he was 83 by then, living in a care home 2 counties over. It took months, 3 rounds of paperwork, a sympathetic social worker, and 1 very long phone call, but I finally got a supervised visit. He remembered Alicia, she was the one they couldn't find, right? Nice girl. Sharp. I asked him what he remembered from that night in April 1984. His eyes shifted. He leaned in a little, like he was about to tell me a secret meant for kids sitting under covers with a flashlight. It wasn't her, he said, it looked like her. But it wasn't. That thing, whatever it was, stood in the middle of the road while my truck stalled. I saw the badge. Saw the name tag. Same one from the paper later. Monroe. But her skin was gray. Like clay. And her mouth didn't open when she talked. I swallowed. She talked to you? He nodded, slowly, not with sound. Just words in my head. Like a memory someone else was feeding me. Then, for a moment, he went quiet. And then he added, she asked me one thing. Over and over. Do you remember the water? That phrase wouldn't leave me alone. I went back to the tapes. The old ones my grandmother had kept in the attic. I digitized all of them, scanned for background audio. A few were damaged. Some had long stretches of silence. But one, marked only with a black, had something hidden in the static. Using audio software, I filtered the layers. Enhanced low frequencies. Brought up the hiss until it formed patterns. And in the middle of that artificial storm, there was a sound, not a voice, a pattern, 3 soft tones, spaced evenly. Repeating every 20 seconds, when I plotted the tones into visual form. They created a waveform. A rhythm. I sent it to Rachel. She called me 20 minutes later, whispering like she didn't want to wake the walls. That's sonar. From something below us. In early 2004, Rachel and I took one last trip to the coast. She had pulled a favor from a colleague with access to a university dive team. We didn't tell them the full story, only that we were looking to map some unusual structures near Eddystone Bluff. That part, at least, wasn't a lie. They dropped the submersible 200 yards off the edge, down into the black beneath the bluff. The feed came in slow, a shaky, grainy live stream from an underwater cam pushing through murk and particulate. For the first 30 meters, nothing but sediment, discarded netting, and kelp. Then came the structure. It was impossibly old, angular. Metallic in parts, but crusted with growth. Huge, vertical panels built into the rock face, some of them like doors. But what made every breath catch in our throats was what sat just beyond it, resting like an offering on a natural ledge beneath the cliff, a second police cruiser, not rusted. Not aged by 19 years in the salt. But pristine, lights intact. Tires full. The St. James County Police badge gleaming under a thick film of silt, and inside, visible only when the cam lens panned tight against the passenger window, was a shape. A person, still in uniform, unmoving, face pale, eyes closed. We surfaced in silence. The dive team, rattled, didn't ask many questions. They sent us a copy of the footage under the condition we never mention their names. Rachel and I didn't speak the entire drive home, not because we were scared, because we were starting to believe something that neither of us could say out loud. That maybe Alicia Monroe never left, that maybe, somehow, part of her was still down there, and that the ocean didn't give her back. It just gave back a reminder. After that dive, everything started to accelerate. Rachel left the county within the week. She told me it was temporary, just until the footage cooled off. But I could hear it in her voice, something had gotten too close. She didn't want to be the next name whispered in a sealed report. I couldn't blame her. I kept the footage locked in an encrypted drive. Didn't upload it, didn't share it. Not because I wanted to protect secrets, but because something inside me whispered, you're not protecting a secret, you're containing it. 1 month later, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. It was an old woman, voice sharp as glass. "You're the boy digging into the Monroe case," she said. I didn't answer, I was a dispatcher. Back then. "My name's Nancy Elwell. I shouldn't be talking to you, but I figure at my age, who's gonna stop me?" She told me she still had the original call log from the night Alicia vanished, the unredacted version. Not the one turned into evidence. The one they pulled from the system 30 minutes later and replaced with a shorter, cleaner version. "They said the call was a disturbance out near Cinder Lane," she said, "but that's not where the call came from." I gripped the phone tighter. Where did it come from? Silence, then, "Coordinates off the coast. A dead radio channel. It's not even supposed to work. It came from the ocean." She mailed me a copy of the log. Faded carbon paper, time-stamped April 9, 1984. The origin line, scrubbed in the official version, read: "Signal source, CH17B, subsurface relay node, inactivated, caller, unverified female voice, IDAS unit 22714, A, Monroe, send backup." They're not in the house. They're underneath it. Then static, then nothing. That's when I started seeing the pattern. Alicia Monroe wasn't the first, and she wasn't the last. I went back to the archives, but not the police records. The coroner's office. The city utilities board. The water department. Departments people forget exist, but where paperwork piles up quietly in basements and steel cabinets no one ever audits. I found 12 reports between 1962 and 1984 that mentioned inland drownings, in dry areas. Yards. Basements. A church hallway. Every time, the same description: the floor was dry before. But when we found them, they were soaked. Like they'd been pulled from a lake. There was salt on their clothes. One report in 1977 stood out. A patrolman named Gerald Watkins was found dead in his cruiser, parked near Ridgeway Fields, 20 miles from the nearest river. Cause of death listed as asphyxiation via brine water inhalation. Inland, in the cruiser, the door had never been opened, but here's what cracked it all open: a map, an old city waterworks blueprint from 1951. It showed a now abandoned network of flood tunnels and cisterns running beneath St. James County. Most were decommissioned after a reservoir plan failed. But one tunnel, Tunnel B8, ran straight from the Eddystone Cliffs to the eastern inland suburbs, right beneath Cinder Lane, that hatch Rachel and I found. It wasn't a bunker, it was a service access point to something the city forgot it built, or was told to forget. I returned there alone. It was stupid. I knew it. But I couldn't let it go. I needed to see more. I broke the lock we'd replaced, climbed back down into the darkness. The lantern I brought flickered with every breath. I moved deeper than before, past the first chamber, past the doors, until I heard it, a soft, irregular clicking sound, like radio static. Underwater, I turned a corner, and there it was. A new door, one we hadn't seen before. It hadn't been open, now it was. Inside was a narrow hallway lined with what looked like old lockers, the kind you'd find in a school. But every single one had a nameplate, and every name was someone I recognized from the missing persons bulletins over the last 40 years: Watkins, Deering, Price, Monroe. Each locker was locked, except hers. Inside was nothing but a single cassette tape. No label. No markings. I took it. I shouldn't have. That night, at home, I played the tape. It didn't start immediately. Just silence. Then faint breathing. Then, her voice, not the voice from the tapes. Not the officer's tone, Alicia's voice. Soft. Personal. "Michael, I don't know how long I've been here. But I know you're listening. There's something below the town. Not made of stone. Not built by hands. It remembers. I saw it in the reflection. It doesn't wear faces. It borrows them. I think it wore mine." A pause, then, "Tell them I didn't drown." Click, end of tape. I still don't know what that place is beneath the town, but I know it listens, I know it waits, and I know Alicia Monroe is still down there, or was. Whether what we pulled from the ocean was her car, her memory, or something made to look like her return. I can't say, but sometimes, on quiet nights, I swear I hear a faint crackle in the pipes. And a voice that whispers, Unit 2-3. On approach. After the tape, I didn't sleep for 3 nights, not because I was afraid, because I was angry that for nearly 20 years, everyone had treated Alicia Monroe's disappearance like an unsolvable equation. Like she'd simply vanished into the margins of a dusty file. But there had always been signals. Always been echoes. The town just stopped listening, or maybe they were told not to. I drove out to see someone I hadn't spoken to since I was a child, Sheriff Dana Bowles, the one who never said Alicia's name at the press conference. She was retired now, living up in the hills near Evermill, in a ranch-style house surrounded by satellite dishes and storm shutters. She opened the door before I even knocked. I figured you'd come. She didn't ask why, she just walked back inside and left the door open. Her house smelled like cedar and strong coffee. Papers everywhere. Maps. Circles. Names. The same research I'd spent years collecting, only older. Deeper. She'd been keeping track all this time. And she'd never said a word. You knew, I said. She didn't answer. I picked up a yellowed photo off her table. It was Alicia. Younger than I'd seen her in any photo. Maybe 20. Off duty. Laughing. Behind her was a blurred shape in the background. Too distant to identify. But somehow it looked duplicated. Like a double exposure. 2 shadows cast in opposite directions. That photo was taken 3 months before she disappeared, Dana said. She brought it to me. Said she didn't remember that day. Said she didn't take the picture. I looked at her. What is this? She sat across from me, folded her hands. I think something moved under this town a long time ago. Before us. Before the church. Before the records. Something that echoes. That mimics. Sometimes it makes itself visible. Just long enough for someone to see something they shouldn't. Then it takes them. She reached into a drawer, pulled out a small cardboard box, and pushed it toward me. These were found in a locked cabinet in the old station before they tore it down. Inside were 7 badges. Each one assigned to a different officer, each one attached to an officer who died or vanished on dry land, and yet every badge was covered in salt residue. That night, I drove through town like I was tracing ghosts, places Alicia had been. Streets she'd walked. Restaurants she'd liked. I found myself stopping outside the old diner near Maine, now abandoned, where she'd once worked before joining the force, and on the front door, smeared across the glass like it had been dragged by a soaking wet hand, were 4 words, "Do you remember me?" No footprints. No other markings. The street was dry. But the smell of salt clung to the air. I didn't go inside, I just stood there. And I realized something terrifying. This wasn't about Alicia anymore. It wasn't even about her case. It was about what she had uncovered. Over the next few weeks, stories started coming out again, small things, whispered through secondhand threads and late-night calls. A kid from the high school who swore he saw a cruiser parked outside his house at 3:11 a.m., engine running, no driver inside. A local DJ who played an old police band frequency for fun, and caught a female voice repeating the phrase, "Tell them I didn't drown." A nurse at the regional hospital who claimed she'd admitted a woman in shock, soaking wet, no ID, who kept saying the same name over and over, Alicia. 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 All the reports were unofficial, all quietly buried, but something was waking up, and the town, it knew. I dug deeper, not into the police records, those were long since wiped or sealed, but into the property deeds, specifically, properties built before 1960 near known groundwater fault lines. Cross-referenced with disappearances, and I found a pattern, 12 houses, all on the same subterranean network of decommissioned flood tunnels. All once owned by people who either died in water or disappeared entirely, all had since been sold to developers, and all were now empty, except one, a boarding house, still active, run by an old man named Harlan Trost. He'd been a volunteer firefighter in the 80s. His name came up once in a side note in Alicia's file. He'd helped respond to a minor kitchen fire at the Cinder Lane property 3 days before she vanished. I visited him. He was thin, slow-moving, but his eyes were sharp. Still watching everything, I asked about Alicia. He didn't flinch. She was brave. Brave in ways most of us couldn't be. That house. It didn't want her there. I asked what he meant. He just stared at me, then said, "You ever been in a room that doesn't echo right? Where your own voice sounds like it's waiting for you?" That's what it was like. Being around her. That last week. I left him my number. 3 days later, he left me a voicemail at 2:03 a.m. The message was short. Breathless. Terrified, "It's in the pipes." I heard her voice in the drain. Not like a recording. Like it's been waiting there. Tell them she didn't drown. Click, he died the next day, aneurysm. Alone in his room. The coroner said he was found in the bathtub, but here's what they didn't include in the report: there was no water in the tub, and his clothes were soaked with salt. After Trost died, the news didn't cover it. Just a single paragraph in the county death notices. No mention of his voicemail. No mention of the tub. And definitely no mention of the salt. I drove to the boarding house that afternoon. His room had already been cleared. The landlord gave me 10 minutes and a sideways look, like she already regretted saying yes. I walked in expecting nothing, but I found something behind the baseboard heater, taped to the wall, a strip of audio cassette. Old magnetic tape, brittle, unspooled, sticky at the edges. There were words written next to it in permanent marker: "She's not a ghost. She's recorded." I took it home. Ran it through an old player that barely worked anymore. The tape hissed, cracked, then silence, and then I didn't leave. They left me. Underneath. A beat, you know where the voices come from. The night after I played that tape, I got a call from Rachel. Her voice was shaky. "Someone sent me something." No note. No return address. Just a Polaroid. "It's from the dive site." I asked what was in it. She paused. "You." I froze. "What do you mean me?" "You. Standing on the ocean floor. Looking into the camera. But your eyes are closed. And you're holding a badge in your right hand." My voice barely came out. "That's not possible." I didn't, she cut in. "The photo is dated April 9, 1984. That was the day Alicia disappeared. That was the night the call came in, and somehow, a photo of me had been taken 19 years before I'd ever been there, wearing the same jacket I'd had on during the dive. Rachel mailed it to me." I scanned the Polaroid. Checked the paper stock. Dated to the correct year. Slight discoloration, consistent with long-term humidity exposure. I even reverse-searched the badge number I was holding. It wasn't Alicia's, it was mine, a number that had never existed in the system. Until now, I couldn't shake it. The voices. The layers. The timelines folding in on themselves. So I did something stupid. I filed a request to reopen the Monroe case as a private party investigator. I submitted everything I had: documents, tapes, maps, photos. I sent it directly to the state. Bypassed the local force. I thought I was doing the right thing. 3 days later, someone broke into my apartment. They didn't take anything, not the laptop. Not the drives. Not the tapes. They left something instead, a cassette, unlabeled, on my pillow. I didn't play it at first. I left it sitting for hours, just staring at it. When I finally did, it was almost silent, just one sound. The click of a police radio activating, and then Alicia's voice, but wrong, distant, off, Unit 23. "We have your location. Please remain still. You've been here before. You'll be here again." The next day I received an email from a city contact. No body had ever been officially recovered from the cruiser found in the ocean. That part of the report had been redacted, but someone had recently filed an addendum. A new detail: inside the glove box of the cruiser, beneath the ID card, they'd found something folded, water-warped but intact, a school photo of me, age 9, wearing a shirt I didn't remember owning, and in the background, half out of frame, was Alicia Monroe, smiling, but not at the camera, at me. This isn't just about her anymore, this is something bigger. Older, I don't know what's beneath St. James County, but I know it watches, it remembers, and it mimics, not to scare us, to replace us, to write us in before we ever arrive, to make sure we're already part of the pattern, before we're even born. After the school photo, I didn't know where to go. I wasn't afraid anymore, not in the usual way. I was untethered. Like I'd crossed some invisible line and couldn't go back. Not because something was stopping me, but because there was nothing left on the other side. Like memory itself had been rewritten, gently, while I wasn't looking. I called Rachel, no answer. I tried her twice, then emailed. No response. The next day, I got a small box in the mail, no return address. But her handwriting on the label, inside, a waterproof USB drive, wrapped in wax paper, and a note. I saw it again. I'm not sure I'm still me. But you need to finish this. Don't follow me. The USB had one file, a video, time-stamped 2 nights prior. Rachel was in the frame, sitting in a dark room, face lit by a single red lamp. She looked tired. Pale. But focused. She didn't waste time. It's not about the town. Not just the tunnels. It's the way they intersect. There's a pattern under the county. The water table, the storm drains, even the old power grid. It's a map. She held something up, a printed blueprint overlaid with red markers. A radial pattern. Like a ripple. At the center, Cinder Lane. I think it's not a place. I think it's an event. Something that repeats. Like a wound that never heals. She paused. I think we're not investigating what happened. I think we're being drawn in to make it happen again. After the video ended, I sat motionless for almost an hour, then I did the only thing I could. I returned to the house, back to Cinder Lane. I brought rope, 2 lanterns, a recorder, and a bag packed for 2 days. I didn't call anyone. I didn't write a note. The hatch was still there. I went down alone. This time, I pushed deeper than ever. The tunnels were breathing. I swear to God, they breathed. Like something miles away was shifting, pulling air in, pushing it out again. Not fast. Not dangerous. Just constant. As if the underground had a pulse. The further I went, the colder it got. But not from lack of sunlight. It was wet cold. Deep sea cold. The kind of chill that gets in your bones and stays even after you're gone. And then, I found it, the end of the tunnel, a chamber. Circular. About 30 feet wide. The walls were lined with screens, not modern ones, old cathode ray monitors. Flickering, each screen showed a different image. But all from the same place, Alicia's cruiser, the ocean floor, the police station in 1984, my apartment, right now, Rachel's room, empty, and in the center of the room, a chair, facing away from me. I stepped forward. Alicia? No answer. I found your badge. I saw the tapes. I know you didn't drown. The screens went black, all at once, and then, click, a speaker behind the chair activated, her voice, not a recording, not distorted. Just calm. You made it farther than the others. But you're still asking the wrong question. I stepped forward slowly. Then tell me. The chair turned. There was no one in it, just her uniform, hanging in the shape of a person. Inside it, nothing, except her badge, and mine, identical. The room began to hum, like a pressure shift. Like I was inside a machine powering up after decades of silence. The screens lit again, but now they all showed me. At different ages. Different clothes. Different places. But always alone. Always walking towards something I couldn't see, and then her voice again, from the walls, from the drains, from the pipes. It doesn't take people. It takes echoes. It learns them. Keeps them. Uses them to build more. The badge was never hers. It was always yours. I ran. I don't remember how I got back out. I remember the sound of my own breath. The taste of salt. The way my hands looked too pale, like they were filmed over with something translucent. I came home. I slept for 2 days, and when I woke up, the badge was on my nightstand, only now it didn't say A. Monroe. It said E. M. Monroe. 22714. I haven't seen Rachel since. The sheriff's house is boarded up, the hatch is gone, sealed under concrete, but I can still hear the click of the radio sometimes, still hear her voice in places it shouldn't be, not screaming, not calling for help. Just waiting, like it knows I'm listening, like it's remembering me. It's been 3 years. And I still haven't told anyone everything, not the full story. Not the tapes. Not what I saw in that room. There are pieces of it floating out there, news reports, half-erased articles, grainy footage from the dive, unofficial whispers in forums and dead message boards. But the whole thing, that's just for me, because now I understand what this story really is, not a mystery, not a haunting, not even a tragedy, it's a repetition, a rehearsal. Over and over. Until it gets it right, St. James County changed, not all at once. Slowly, like water filling a basement you thought was sealed, people started moving out. Not because they were scared, but because they couldn't sleep. They couldn't concentrate. Couldn't remember what they came into the room for. Or who they were about to call. The town council installed new lighting systems. Cameras. Rewired all municipal buildings. But it didn't stop the leakage. The new sheriff, a woman named Cardoz, tried reopening the Monroe case again. The file was gone. The entire file system was gone, as in, never existed, not corrupted. Not deleted, erased from the building. The folder that had held Alicia's name in the physical archive was now full of restaurant receipts from the early 2000s. When Cardoz asked the records clerk what happened, the woman said something strange. "We haven't had any missing officers in over 50 years. She was holding Alicia Monroe's photo in her hand as she said it. There's more. The high school yearbooks started changing. You'd be flipping through the 1983 edition, and suddenly see a face that didn't belong. A kid with your last name. Your eyes. Your jawline, but you'd never been in that school, and the caption would read, most likely to join the force E. M. Monroe. Then it would vanish. The next time you checked, it wasn't there, but you'd still remember the quote. People have tried mapping the tunnels. 2 surveyors went missing. One came back 4 days later, barefoot, soaked to the skin, clutching a metal plate with a badge number that doesn't exist in any system. The other was never found, but his voice was captured, 3 months later, on a deep-sea research hydrophone 200 miles offshore, whispering the phrase, Unit 23. I'm not alone. As for Rachel, the dive footage was leaked online once. For 23 minutes, it played normally. You could see the structure, the cruiser, the strange reflections on the glass. Then, frame by frame, it began to change. Her face disappeared first, then her hands, then her reflection in the viewport. By the end of the footage, only her voice remained, repeating, in an even, non-emotional tone, "It doesn't take people. It takes echoes. Do you remember me?" The video was removed in under an hour. Her social media vanished 2 days later, and the apartment she'd rented, when I visited the building, the number she gave me didn't exist. I tried to leave. I moved inland. Cut ties. Changed jobs, but sometimes, when the wind picks up at night, I can still hear the radio click just before I fall asleep. Sometimes I wake up with sand in my bedsheets, salt in my hair, and I've started seeing that cruiser again, in my dreams, or not dreams. Parked on quiet roads I drive for the first time. Headlights on. Empty, and the badge number always reads, 22714. There's something I've never told anyone, something that's been happening for years now. Sometimes, when I look in the mirror, just for a second, I see her, not behind me, not beside me, but as me, wearing the uniform, wearing my face, and she's mouthing the same thing every time. You were never investigating me. You were becoming me. The town still stands, the streets are paved. The schools are open. The station was rebuilt. There's even a mural of Alicia now, smiling, hand on her badge, looking like a symbol of strength, but if you stand beneath it long enough, if you let the wind get in your ears, if you close your eyes just a little, you might hear the sea, even though the coast is miles away, and a voice behind your ribs, humming gently, do you remember the water? Because here's the thing. She didn't drown, and neither will you, you'll just forget, and then remember yourself wrong. Like the rest of us, round pushpin St. James County, round pushpin April 9th, round pushpin Unit 23. On approach. Lights off. No vehicles outside. No movement, you've heard this before, because you were always supposed to, because you were always part of it.